So on that note, I'm not going to take too much time, even though it says 45 minutes. What I want to do is bring Donna Taylor from IDC and Simon Robinson from 451 to one of these chairs. We have these bar stools. And by the way, Monica makes fun of me calling these bar stools. Do you want to sit down right there? We're just gonna have. By the way, we don't rehearse any of these things for you to know. Another data point about Nexenta events. On these events, we didn't even send an email. Hey, these are the questions we're gonna ask or anything like that. Did we? We didn't. If someone did, don't do it again. We do these events really ad hoc, open source, liberate your mind and soul kind of a event. And that what we want to do is, at a high level, hear from you first. Maybe a quick introduction about who you are. Let's start, Donna, with you.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm Donna Taylor from IDC. I started my career in technology about 15 years ago, working at IBM in California and working in the HDD and storage systems divisions. Working with corporate development and strategy, so we were really doing fund-to-fund investing. So we were investing in certain companies that ended up being acquired by IBM, for instance, and moved on my career from there into venture capital and later on to Gartner and now IDC. And so now I get the opportunity to continue that journey, if you will, in technology where I get to look at the whole industry, and I'm very fortunate to get to talk to a lot of the industry participants, whether it's vendors, channels, or end users.
Wonderful. Simon?
Good morning, my name's Simon Robinson. I'm a Research Vice President with 451 Research. We're a little bit smaller than IDC as a analyst firm, but still fast growing and ambitious nonetheless. So our focus really is on innovation and disruptive technologies in enterprise IT. So I myself look after the storage research practice, so I'm a storage guy, so hopefully kind of preaching to the converted to a little degree here this morning. We've got about 300 staff worldwide. We're headquartered out of New York, but we've got offices worldwide, including in the UK. And as I say, our focus really is on how this industry really is being disrupted, not only by new technologies, but by new business models. And I think it's that kind of confluence of factors that makes this such an exciting time to be in the IT industry generally, but also the storage industry specifically, because I've been with the company since 2000, pretty much when we started the company, and covering the storage space since then. I think this is the most exciting time since I've been in the industry in storage, and looking forward to discussing why that is this morning with you guys.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for again for being here. Obviously, Simon, you live in London. You just had that big event you guys held, which I really enjoyed. The hosting and HSTC. What was
Hosting and Cloud Transformation Summit. Bit of a mouthful.
Hosting and Cloud Transformation. HCTS, correct? Okay, I'm trying to learn. But I'll tell you, it was a great event. A lot of C-level executives, a lot of vendors, a lot of customers, a lot of hosting customers. Mm-hmm. What were the, let's share a little bit with the team, because there are a lot of hosting services in the room as well. As far as Nexenta experience in Benelux, especially in the Netherlands, we have a lot of hosting customers. As a matter of fact, out of our 5,000 customers, nearly 1,500 of them are hosting companies. They love open source. They're like the renegades, right? And they've been doing this software-defined things, the journey, they've been going through it almost in the past 6 years. Even our product was version 00001. They were dealing with this kind of stuff. So what do you think? What did you guys learn? What was different this year than the previous years?
So, good question. I think, to me, this is just, so the hosting space, I agree, is, and the service provider, the whole kind of delivery of IT is really changing. There's this kind of public-private hybrid opportunities emerging. Every reseller now is looking to be a service provider, and organizations, I think, are slowly starting to, traditional IT organizations are slowly getting their heads around this new model. And now that they kind of have a comparison, they have a benchmark that has been driven by the large public cloud providers, the likes of Amazon and so on. They're saying, hey, I may be interested in moving some of my workloads to that environment, but I'm not sure that Amazon is the fit for everything. But now I at least have a benchmark for what this kind of thing should cost me. And that kind of exercise is something that traditionally IT hasn't gone through internally, or at least they've tried and they haven't really succeeded. So Amazon is providing the benchmark, and that is the standard to which everybody else in the industry is looking to stand up to. So I think that folks are saying, okay, this is kind of, I can understand, I can see the advantages of that model, but I have unique requirements. I want to embrace the cloud on my own terms and in ways that makes me comfortable. So how can I work with service providers to do that? And I think what we've seen from the service provider industry is a really kind of interesting evolution because, as I say, I agree, many service providers have been absolutely at the forefront of embracing new technologies, open source, and really delivering new services in different ways. But I think some service providers at the same time have kind of struggled with legacy technologies, and they're kind of going through this process. How can I meet customer requirements using legacy techniques, legacy technologies and approaches? And what we're seeing now is many are coming to the conclusion that actually this just needs a ground-up different approach. So they are now starting to embrace these new tools that are coming out, especially around OpenStack, CloudStack, open source. Open source in storage is it just hasn't existed to a great degree. Look at the evolution that's happened in the server space. It's been through two revolutions really in the last decade. Firstly, Linux, and now through virtualization. And the server space has just changed out of all magnitude in the last decade. Look at storage. Storage is still pretty much the same as it was 10, 15, 20 years ago. The disks are bigger, the pipes are fatter, the processors are faster, but we're still managing storage pretty much in the same way that we managed it 10 or 15 years ago. We're still managing LUNs, volumes, RAID sets. It's still very, very specific to each individual vendor. I call it the kind of accidental architecture. That's kind of silos of fragmented technology all around the data center. This has to change. And I think that's why storage is really interested in the context of this whole move to software-defined everything, because the storage is the last piece of the infrastructure that really has to go through a major reinvention.
I'm having goosebumps right now. I feel like Arab Spring coming up. It's going to be like a new Arab Spring in storage. We should go like Occupy Storage like events.
Listen,
V for Vendetta mask going on with Nexenta people. No,
it's not going to be easy. But I think, you asked about the service providers. Service providers are at the forefront of this because they're competing with Amazon. Amazon has just got enormous scale. They're actually, a lot of people ding them for just being it's all about price. Actually, Amazon is doing some incredible innovations at the technology level. The services, the rate they can roll out services, the new capabilities they're bringing to market is serious. We call Amazon the Coke of the cloud industry, and there is no Pepsi. Amazon is really out there on its own. Instead, we have a bunch of colas, if you like, no brand colas that are looking to become that.
By the way, Nexenta is the organic orange juice fresh. You decide what's good for you. We don't like aspartame.
So I think. So I think that is the benchmark, as I say, that Amazon really has changed this industry. It's changed this industry out of all proportion, and has, I think, actually shown us kind of a different way of doing this.
Absolutely.
And that is the opportunity. At the same time, they are a very, very, they are a tough competitor. We're seeing how they're changing the way. Some of the big traditional vendors are kind of having to respond to some of the initiatives that Amazon and Google and others are rolling out there. I'll shut up there for now.
No, that's
a very exciting time.
That's very exciting. We totally agree with you. By the way, we see also Amazon in our customers and our partners. They deal with them, and we share your thoughts. So having said that, Donna, moving to you, listening to Simon about the hosting side of things and the Amazon effect, so to speak, you write and talk about some of these transformations a lot as well between private cloud and public cloud, and obviously hybrid initiatives. Yes. What are your views, both individually, also from a research perspective on behalf of IDC? How are the next 12 months looking like based on what we heard so far, from your perspective?
Well, I think in Europe, we're really seeing that tipping point occur where the adoption rates are really accelerating, right? And so this is true for public, private, or hybrid clouds. And, people seem to be hedging their bets in a way, right? So they're kind of straddling a couple of different areas. They're putting some of their workloads in the cloud, some of them they're keeping on site. But they're really looking to structure their storage and their infrastructure in such a way that it allows them a bit of flexibility. But it was like Simon was talking about, storage has been an area where it's kind of like the tail wagging the dog in a way, right? And so you had to kind of adjust your infrastructure according to the limitations of a particular area of technology, and that happened to be storage up until now. And so we're seeing that transition occur now, and it's accelerating in a lot of countries. And interestingly enough, in the Nordics, a lot of our research indicates that while the Nordics have very IT-savvy individuals, the adoption rate for a lot of the newer technologies, for instance, they typically sit on the sidelines and analyze things. They're not quick to adopt anything just because it's the newest buzzword. But when the Nordics do adopt a technology, you can see it very quickly. You can see that there is a tipping point where that accelerates here as well. And so I would have to think that with some of our research and what we write about this, right? When the Nordics adopt something, I would think that would be something that the rest of Europe takes a look at and says, almost as a validation of a particular technology, that if they're adopting it in that region, then it's something that I want to look at as well. So I think it's very powerful, the amount of influence I think this region has on technology adoption.
Yeah, I think that's I can prove that with one little anecdote, very open conversation here. We had actually, what is this Saudi Arabia of Nordics? Norway, right? 4 million people producing and 98% of the oil in Europe, which is fantastic. So actually we have Statoil, the state-owned, also partially private oil company, came to Bay Area. It was very interesting. Their CIO, very smart lady, the CTO, the entire executive team, the CEO and the board basically sent the technology team and some of the business owners from Statoil to Bay Area, to Silicon Valley, to meet with all the high-tech companies. And one of them was actually Nexenta. They met with us. They heard about Nexenta. They came all the way to talk about software-defined infrastructures for oil and gas. And they want to run their oil platforms more efficiently from a technology perspective. And they want to manage the risk better because they do a lot of research data. To your point, that was interesting because in oil and gas, we get more interest from Europe and Middle East and Asia than sometimes than US companies. So I totally agree with things that you're talking about is actually firsthand. Going back to a few things that we heard over the past few months from the customers, just wanted to pass those by you. And again, truly, we never rehearse these things. It's just an open conversation, very ad hoc. We're hearing from a storage trends perspective, tying back to that business model, Simon and also Donna, you talked about. We hear a lot of convergence for the data center. We hear a lot about hybrid systems. And we hear, obviously, open source and software definedness, so to speak, as the leading trends. And one of the areas coming up lately is also the intelligence. Not necessarily like, I don't want to just say the big data concept. I think at 451 Research, you talked about the total data concept. So what do you think about these trends and some of these trends that we're hearing? Are they real? Are they changing beyond its private or public cloud? Can you talk to us about from a technology trends perspective within storage?
Yeah, so I think some of these things, so I think all of them are real. They're just to different degrees. I think the convergence trend, I think, is absolutely real. And I think that is particularly exciting. You know, we speak to a couple of thousand IT organizations every year. We do a survey. We do actually do interviews with them. It's not kind of online surveys. It's us talking on them to IT decision makers, asking them about their perspectives, their plans, their spending intentions across a whole set of capabilities, across storage, servers, networking, virtualization, cloud. And what they're telling us is, what they've told us over the last 2 to 3 years is that convergence makes an awful lot of sense to them. You know, in the past there was this kind of this assumption, this trade-off, that the trade-off was worth making, that it's worth investing in having best-of-breed capabilities at every layer in the stack, at the server layer, at the storage layer, at the networking layer, and the kind of industry was aligned around that. They were kind of happy for that to happen. You know, I'd buy my servers from my server vendor. I'd buy my storage from my storage vendor. I'd buy my networking equipment from my networking vendor. I got best of breed choice at every single layer, and that, you know, that kind of flexibility was more than enough to offset the effort I had to spend in stitching all of those elements together. What we saw is 2 things. Virtualization came along, changed the game. Why? Because suddenly the kind of physical connection between the application, the server, the operating system, and the physical infrastructure was completely blown apart. The challenge really is that convergence is one term, but it spans a whole spectrum of capabilities. You know, there's hard convergence, soft convergence, application-centric, infrastructure-centric, and you know, there's almost kind of a tyranny of choice out there, because you can converge your infrastructure in so many different ways that kind of figuring out the best way, and there are all sorts of different approaches, I think is overwhelming for many IT managers. So we're going to go through kind of a transition period on that. But you know, again, I think it's real. I think, you know, the announcement that VMware made a couple of weeks ago around vSAN is really, really interesting. And that kind of brings in the software-defined piece, which we'll maybe come on to in a minute, but I'll let Donna chime in as well.
Very good. Do you want to add, Donna?
Yes.
Take it in another direction if you want to.
Sure, no, that's fine. We're seeing something similar also in our research when we're looking at the adoption of what we'll call integrated systems. We just launched a tracker last year in order to cover this market, because whether you're talking about a single SKU from one vendor, or you're looking at reference architecture, for instance, right? You see that end users want that best of breed, but some of them also want flexibility. They're concerned about vendor lock-in, and so we see when we're talking about reference architectures that they get a little bit of both. So they get kind of the best of both worlds when it comes to best of breed. But that continues to be a concern for a lot of end users, is the vendor lock-in. But it's certainly driving technology adoption in a lot of other areas as well.
Very good. By the way, we're going to come to the audience to ask questions as well. So think through. I'm going to come and ask you guys questions for you to ask questions, and please think through that. Let's get also a little bit cute here. Can you think through for the storage industry a little bit? What is the good, the bad, the ugly that of the past 12 months into the next 12 months? I'm going to come back to that. So I don't want to put you on the spot yet, but think through that. We would love to have a conversation with you about the good, the bad, the ugly. This Sergio Leone, so to speak, the part of our conversation here in storage industry. But before we get to that, and before you're thinking your questions, one area that we're getting a lot of inquiries from our customers is obviously going back, total cost of ownership. The reason, in most cases, I mean, we hear a lot of things. Hey, again, risk management, fast time to market, flexibility, simplicity, and total cost of ownership. We feel like all of those things, at the end of the day, in some shape or form, ties to the cost. The owner owning the infrastructure. And we, as a software-defined company, obviously, we have a lot of leeway because it's all margin. We work on any hardware in a system. As you can tell from our partners, we partner with everybody. We're like Switzerland of love. So in that world, so to speak, what do you see specifically from a financial perspective, total cost of ownership perspective, legacy, vendor locking vendors? versus software-defined world with commodity hardware versus Amazon's and now Google coming in the game, right? With all the other local service providers. What do you see from a TCO perspective and advantages and disadvantages of these different transitions? It's a big topic, but can you?
I'll try.
Yeah.
So anybody, raise your hands if your IT budgets are kind of growing at a pretty healthy clip these days.
There's one guy.
There's always one. There's always one. Everybody's like, I hate that guy.
That's the Armada. They're the music guys. They're making a lot of money.
So you know, there's a kind of new economic reality here, and I think this is the one area that really, you know, this is where kind of the rubber meets the road on this stuff, because there is now an imperative on organisations to do things differently, and I think, you know, even in some areas of the industry where, you know, frankly, it didn't matter. It seemingly didn't matter in some verticals what they spent on IT. They just bought whatever they liked, and seemingly it was a bottomless pit of budget, especially on the storage side. You know, those days are over. This is the kind of new normal that we've all been kind of grappling with for the last 5 or 6 years. So, you know, I think that's where, again, you know, the public cloud model has shown us actually there is a way to think about IT cost in a different way. And I think, you know, the emergence of chargeback, you know, showback, shame back, all that kind of stuff is starting to get on the agenda. It's still, you know, early days. The TCO thing is still really evolving, but I think, you know, to turn it back to the storage side, you know, the kind of assumption in the past is that the cost of storage, you know, declines, right? I mean, disks get bigger and they get cheaper. So, you know, in aggregate, you know, on average, you know, I'm buying more capacity every year. But what many organizations are now kind of dealing with is the operational kind of cost of doing that. And that really goes back to, again, the way that we have traditionally implemented storage on a very application-specific basis. We have these different islands. We've got NAS, we've got SAN, we've got primary, we've got secondary. You know, we've got backup, we've got DR, and each one of these things has a, you know, different product, usually often from a different vendor. You know, the actual overhead on managing this stuff is just astronomical, and that is why I think, again, coming back to the original point, that is why, you know, there is this kind of new normal that we have to think differently about the way that we implement our storage architectures. On maybe we'll come on to talk about software defined. I think, you know, software defined is we have this food stuff in the UK called Marmite. I'm not sure if they have it over here. I think it's vile, but it's the advertising strapline is you love it or you hate it. Mm-hmm. I think software-defined everything is kind of like the Marmite of the industry. People either really like the term or they hate the term. And that
is this like Vegemite of Australia?
Yeah, it's vegetable yeast extract. Yes. It's like, why would I want to put that on my bread? Yeah, what's not to love? So I think, you know, software defined is I think we're at that stage, you know, and you know, we've got some data points on, you know, again, we asked our survey base, you know, is the software defined data center a strategic imperative for your organization? And folks are either telling us absolutely yes or absolutely not. So, you know, the good point from my perspective is that people have an opinion on it. Yeah. But I think there's some ways to go to kind of, you know, convince the industry that this isn't just the emperor's new clothes. You know, that we kind of have a habit of this in IT to kind of jump on the latest fashion bandwagon and convince people that there is some real substance and there is a real different way of thinking about things behind this. I think a lot of it depends on what the vendor's perspective is. You know, the reality is that many IT organizations, they do rely on a couple of vendors for their direction, to influence their own roadmaps, their own evolution. And I think depending on, without wanting to name any names, of course, depending on who your advisor is on the vendor side, kind of influences whether you think this is a load of hokey or whether there's something real in it. So.
From an analyst perspective, I guess it's great when every single vendor, doesn't matter, a software vendor or hardware vendor, start having websites with big puntos. We are a software-defined storage vendor or infrastructure vendor.
Listen, every storage vendor I've talked to in the last in the last year is telling me their software-defined storage strategy.
We love that, don't we?
That's awesome. Yeah. It's like when everybody has a software-defined strategy, then the term becomes somewhat redundant. Yeah. And I think that's where the challenge is.
In a sense, they're seeing an opportunity and they want to be part of it, which is great for innovation as well. Donna, what do you think about these trends and topics?
Right, well, because everyone's using the terminology and they're just throwing it out there, whether or not they actually engage in it, really kind of devalues the term, and I hate to see it because it makes it more difficult for those who are validly in the area and in the space. And as we've talked about this is not just a buzzword in the industry. It's something, real, and it's valuable and has a lot of pros to it, and something that can actually be implemented and realized, for instance, right? So when we're talking about TCO, one of the main problems that we have when we talk to end users is the fact that a lot of these end users do not even know what their TCO is for their traditional infrastructure, the one that they have on site. And so then to have to go in and try to educate them on the TCO of, your product, for instance, is going to be even more difficult since they don't have a baseline from which to compare. And exacerbating that problem is the fact that, a lot of times they don't try to quantify the qualitative aspects of their architecture, right? And so it's the work hours that are put towards certain very redundant tasks that don't really add any value to the organization. And so what we're seeing in a lot of these newer technologies or approaches is the fact that it frees up a lot of time of the folks who are managing the data in the first place to, and I'll talk about this later on this afternoon, where we're looking at storage, for instance, a changing paradigm from looking at storage as a cost containment area to something that's actually revenue generation. And this also applies to the people who are managing the data. So if we automate a lot of this, it frees up their time to actually do higher value work for the company and also to help generate revenue as well. So it's really twofold looking at the TCO. It makes a vendor's job harder.
Totally agree. Totally
so
agree.
case in point, one of our end user customers, talking to them a couple of months ago, and on this point, he was saying, my boss knows the price of every single Amazon service, and we don't use Amazon anywhere in our business. But he's using that to beat me over the head to say, why is it costing us this when I can go to Amazon and get it for whatever it is, yeah. So, that's why it's being used kind of as a carrot or a stick, depending on your viewpoint.
Yeah. We were having actually...
As you say, the industry hasn't had this kind of... hasn't really thought about this before, so...
Yeah, we totally agree with you. Actually, we were having a meeting just recently with a Fortune 20 bank in the US, which is a customer of Nexenta. And very openly, they have many tiers of their storage. For tier 1, they use legacy vendors, a few of them. We have all their tier 2 and tier 3 storage, where their backup, even some of their cold storage, they're moved all to Nexenta. And their goal was, look, I'll get the tier 1 9 nines from my $6,000 per terabyte storage vendor, which I've been using since World War I. Works for me. And I'm not trying to be cute about it, but that kind of a scale performance I need, and I'm willing to pay that. But I don't want to do that for my tier 2 and below. So because we see also as a vendor, not all storage is the same. Obviously, vertical workloads, apps are different, but also type of tier. So we kind of like that being that Walmart of storage or Asda of storage world. We don't need to be Harrods. What is the Dutch Harrods? I don't know, but we don't want to be the Dillards or I'm showing my age, Dillards. Are you kidding? But we don't need to be Nordstroms. So we see a lot of lower tier storage moving also to this type of a very economic model, including some of the service model. And by the way, right after lunch, Thomas Corneli is going to have a slide here. We want to talk about a little bit cost models that we analyze based on our customer data. And actually, we're going to bid it right now to you both. We want to do an ROI study based on this with our customer information, not our information, but customer information from a cost perspective to see legacy versus cloud-hosted storage versus a software-defined model, and how would the cost be? We believe we are pretty gutsy to see those numbers. We've done some internal analysis with our customer data. Actually, we would love to bring that to IDC and to 451 for you to analyze it and tell us back, are we on the right model? Because we want to share that model with our customers. So Thomas Corneli actually is going to share that slide right after lunch to have a quick discussion about the TCO models that we saw. Obviously, as a vendor, we are a little bit more on the Nexenta front, but we got the data from our customers. We'd like to get your feedback on it as well. So let's go through the good, the bad, the ugly. The good, the bad, the ugly of storage of the market. I'm going to ask that the question and say, still think about it. We need one sentence in each. Any questions, comments from the room? We have a microphone. I see Guy Watts from GTech, the CEO. Guy?
My question is, one of you said that...
Guy, hold on. Let me get my microphone on my chest for you. Talk to my chest.
Lovely nipples.
We love our partners. Did you hear that?
One of you mentioned that in every of your conversations with the other storage vendors, everybody has got a software-defined roadmap. We've seen something similar in the VDI marketplace where Wise were pushing their Zero clients and HP was pushing their Smart clients, and there was a little bit of confusion. So what do Nexenta have to do to differentiate their software-defined solution as opposed to some of the other vendors that are trying to jump on that bandwagon?
Great question.
So take a stab first. So I think they're in a good starting position because it's a software company, right? So I think having that and having open source roots, and Tarkan talked a little bit about that, I think is really important. And commodity hardware, the fact that you guys run on commodity hardware, I think that they're three kind of important aspects. The challenge...
and we're crazy.
And
we're crazy for our customers. That's very important.
Okay.
I have to say that, guys. Go ahead.
The challenge with software-defined anything, and especially in the storage context, is that actually, when push comes to shove, customers like to buy appliances. They like to buy a box with one number on it that if something goes wrong, they call that number, and that they sort out that problem if there is an issue. So the thing that the industry, I think, has to resolve is, okay, how do I embrace the notion of software-defined and the key elements of a software-defined approach, but in a form factor, in a product, in a package that makes sense for me? Because depending on the sophistication of the client, there aren't that many mid-size organizations that have the expertise or the desire, really, to start deploying software, managing this software estate on hardware that they source, independently. Big environments are doing it. Service providers are kind of more likely to do it because that is their business. But I think the challenge for Nexenta is, okay, how do we actually package this in a way that makes sense for the customer? That would be my advice.
Donna?
I agree also. I mean, they're in a good spot that, they're a software company. They don't have the history of the legacy that a lot of existing vendors have, right? The behemoth companies who are trying to be all things to all people from soup to nuts. Any messaging that goes out into the marketplace or new technology that comes out there has a life cycle, right? And so it ebbs and flows. And I've talked to a lot of large vendors about this as well regarding their approach to the market and how they can appear more hip, if you will, and more agile, and actually be more flexible and agile. And what I've seen is really a resistance to change internally so that they cannot necessarily communicate that to the end user. So if you don't walk the walk yourself regarding agility and flexibility and taking advantage of market opportunities and responding instead of reacting, you're going to have a harder way to the market than I think Nexenta has. And I think what Nexenta has done well also has been to communicate a lot of the use cases that their customers have experienced, for instance, and the fact that they're promoting this idea of open, right? And so they're not looking to lock anyone in or reel them in and then have a catch at the end, right? Because that's what everybody's very suspicious of nowadays. It's always what's the catch. And I think they're not only promoting the open standards, they're also promoting the idea of being open with everyone. And so that's very much to their advantage.
To tie to, Guy, to your question, I think they were good feedback for us too, because we were learning from these conversations openly. That is the reason, by the way, to your point, Guy, and as a partner, as a channel partner, and there are many of you in the room, this is a huge opportunity. Because we are not, I'm just saying this, read my lips on that, we're not gonna have a hardware ourselves. We're gonna stay as a software company. That's why our customers and we love you partners. You guys bring the system, the ODM defined and Inventec Quanta. You think Supermicro is cheap, right? We have now Inventec Quanta, cutting those prices even in half. With Dell and HP and Cisco, other partners, you get a better service with a better brand. But with some of these Asian ODMs now, we're doing work. I mean, the hardware is, you think Supermicro is cheap? They're halving, those prices with our software on top, with some software-defined networking from Arista or Cisco, and all of a sudden you have a new hybrid converged model for your data center. Having said that, to your point, Simon, that number on that box is our partner's number. Our partners are building those boxes together, like NAS in the UK, G-Tech, Feeder, ADN in Germany. Many of our partners now playing that role. That's service role, that solution role. That's why we're loving to working with you guys as partners, and that's one of our key success stories, I think. And we've been listening to Simon and Donna about this for a long time. You've been always talking about this, that number, that service. That's why we are also investing heavily to our service organization. Rick, you're going to talk about later in the afternoon. On the professional services side, level 1, level 2, level 3 services through our partners. Dell provides services. We provide services through our partners like Supermicro as well. So obviously, it is not maybe as straightforward as you buy a box and you pay a lot of money and you get that number and service with the person. In our case, our partner down in the field provide that service. And we're going to get better and better at that. About the open, I'll give you one anecdote. I mentioned this earlier. With a big bank, we are doing this business. Is again, a Fortune bank, Fortune-ranked bank, and all Tier 2 storage with us. And they came to us and said, hey, we have an idea to do business intelligence. And by the way, sometimes we have more engineers than you do. This bank has 7,000 application developers and systems engineers. And they came to us and said, hey, look, we're doing now this open source implementation using Nexenta's Chef and Puppet deployment for automation for their OpenStack environment. And now they're putting some open source tools to do data intelligence at no cost, which the same solution from another vendor cost them almost $10 million for the next 5 years with licensing. And they want to do this themselves. So we find that openness as a differentiator, to Simon's point, and to your point, Donna, we're going to get also better in servicing the customer as we're growing. We believe that like VMware went through this journey 14 years ago, I think on the storage side of things that we, as the vendors, listening to you and get better at it as well. Any other questions and comments? One in the front. Do you want to talk about chest? Oh, you don't want to talk about chest anymore. Okay. Thank you, Monica.
Thank you for the microphone.
Can you introduce yourself as well, please?
Yes, my name is Huip Klaasens. I'm responsible for data center practice within Westcon Group.
Okay.
So my question is, and Simon referred to this already, VMware vSAN. So when you look at the next 12 months or so, how do you see yourself competing with VMware vSAN, or what's your take on that?
So thank you for the question. The question was about the vSAN. Actually, we are very integrated partners with VMware. For those who don't know, I didn't want to do a lot of promotion on this earlier, but VMware is one of our very key partners. Actually, what we call them is our strategic partners out of top five. And for those who don't know, we have integration under View for their VDI environment. We have a VSA product, virtual storage appliance. By the way, the product manager is right in front of you, Mike Letchen. That product is #1 certified product by VMware to do basically software-only storage optimization, running on top of an EMC or NetApp appliance as well. It doesn't have to be on Nexenta software-defined storage. Basically optimizes, accelerates storage for the VDI users. On the vSAN, we have integration to vSAN. And also, we have a lot of work going on, not only on vSAN, also on VNAS initiative of VMware, which we're gonna make some major announcements later at VMworld in September. I don't wanna steal your thunder. We've been talking through this. Imagine Nexenta is one of those management modules running on top of vSAN, as vSAN is the platform we're running on, as one of those software-specific application on top of it, and delivering a more managed, integrated storage, unified storage management to the customer. So it's a partner to us more than anything else. However, if you're a hardware storage play, that might be a little bit a doomsday for you, because we believe vSAN is a reality. It's a little bit low end today. We believe it's going to get better in the next 12 to 24 months. We're working very closely with VMware actually on that. And offline, we can share with you a little bit more in detail. I don't want to share publicly what we're going to do, because it's going to come also as an announcement from VMware itself. So the bottom line is, it's a big partnership for us, and we have a lot of integration work going on right now around vSAN as well as VNAS. Thank you for the question. Good. Yeah, please, go ahead.
I think vSAN is one of the few implementations of a true software-defined storage implementation. So I think it's hugely important, and will prove to be important, not only for VMware, but in just kind of validating that approach to the market.
Amen. And we love that because of that reason as well. Validates the market segments for us. Donna, do you want to add anything to that?
I think it's been pretty much
And you can
pretty
have a
much
session later
said,
on.
exactly right. So.
Any other questions? As you guys thinking about your good, the bad, the ugly? Any other questions, comments in the room? Don't worry, you don't have to talk to my chest. It's going to be with Monica in the microphone. Could you introduce yourself, please?
Good morning. My name is Ranieri Mir. I'm acting as a CTO in Bull. Bull is a French company acting in about everything in IT, kind of small HP or small IBM. My question was about OpenStack domain, how Nexenta is acting in the OpenStack domain, mainly against some native storage like Safe or GlusterFS.
A very good question. The question was about OpenStack. I say a few words from an Nexenta perspective, and would love to get your feedback as well. To be frank, we love all those open cloud implementation networks or ecosystems or constellations, for the lack of the term. Out of our 1,500 service provider customers, hosting customers, a big majority, I would say probably close to 90%, Thomas, would you agree, are CloudStack customers. CloudStack got a lot of POs, and OpenStack gets a lot of PRs, as we kind of joke in the industry so far, but we believe in OpenStack. We believe OpenStack is a great network of companies innovating. As a vendor, as a software-defined storage vendor, we are one of the lead contributors for storage-related implementations around Cinder and around Swift. For those who don't know, these are the working groups around storage. We also work with Horizon, Heat, and a few others around systems management and security as well with Keystone. We partner with companies like Mirantis, Cloud Scaling, and a few other OpenStack-specific software vendors for implementation. We believe OpenStack's time is in the next 24 to 36 months. Some of our customers heavily deploying OpenStack right now, like Korean Telecom, one of our big customers, actually publicly talk about them. We have almost 1 exabyte under management, 100 petabytes it's with Korean Telecom. They host nearly 30,000 customers on our technology as a hosting service in Korea. And they do a lot of CloudStack and OpenStack, and actually they are in production. So we see signs of greatness, but it's just starting right now. And I believe, and we believe as a company, Cinder side of things, which is the block and file storage implementation, is real. We have a few customers working on that. We just announced another customer called Scale Matrix, another hosting service provider out of San Diego with Mirantis, deploying OpenStack. We're seeing it in hosting service providers as a big deal. As private cloud owners doing their own OpenStack implementations, I think there's still work to be done based on our research and our own implementation with the customers. That's what we're seeing today. We believe in it. We're investing on it. Again, Mike Lechin is our product manager for that space. Also, Cloud Stack to us is big deal because our customers are actually running on it. So we work with Citrix on the Cloud Stack side of things with Cloud.com implementation. We have integration to the systems management and storage tools around OpenStack as well. Our Chef Puppet implementation automation work is all around OpenStack and Cloud Stack, and more work is coming up. What do you think, Simon and Donna, around OpenStack?
Yeah, I broadly agree with that kind of direction. I think clearly it's early days, but there's an awful lot of interest, mostly in the service provider space. But we're starting to see more and more proof of concepts, more rollouts on the test and dev side in the enterprise. What I think is kind of interesting is that there's this kind of new discipline of DevOps that many large enterprises are starting to embrace. And as you say, they're using this just different type of, they've got a different mindset. They're usually young kids with a different kind of background, completely different set of expectations, and they are gravitating more naturally to these open source stacks. So I think when we look at where OpenStack, Cloud Stack, that type of initiative is being embraced in bigger organizations in the traditional enterprise, it is on that kind of DevOps side. It's cloud builders, it's folks deploying around the LAMP stack, very kind of web cloud-centric applications. It hasn't yet penetrated what I'd call sort of the mainstream traditional data center, but I think that is starting to happen. And again, one of the things that many CIOs are faced with is, does it make sense for me to run these applications internally? Do I need to be making these investments for applications that add zero value to my business, that are just kind of, it's just regular stuff that every organization does, whether that's payroll or HR or CRM. Why am I doing this? What is the value to my business of doing this in-house? And kind of that is really this kind of, I've seen some organizations going through a fairly ruthless exercise around what makes sense for me to keep in-house. And if so, if I'm going to keep it, should I change it? Should I move it to a different type of platform? So I think that kind of interface or integration between the cloud builders and traditional IT, we'll get onto good, bad, and the ugly. I think that is an interesting space. It could be good, it could be bad, it might turn ugly.
I like that. Very political answer. Donna?
IDC holds a similar view regarding timeline, right around 2 to 3 years for this space. But I think we're going to see the momentum in this area accelerate for a couple of reasons. If you look at the economy, right, it's not really turned around yet. And as a result of that, we see that the purchasing decisions go up the stack. Now, that typically means that there's a longer sales cycle, but the positive in this is that it happened at exactly, I think, the right time for a lot of these technologies to be adopted, because what you needed to do was break down the silos between the different areas, whether you're talking about storage, servers, or networking. And you needed to have buy-in at C-level executive approach. And so in order to do that, you had to have a holistic view of the organization. And what we're seeing at the C-level is that a lot of these people are not coming in just with technical degrees or technical backgrounds, but also business backgrounds. So they're able to, I see it from a lot of different perspectives, and to be able to value and quantify the flexibility what we were talking about in looking at open, and see that adopting that approach is actually probably the best approach that they could achieve in their organization.
One last question from the audience. Anybody, a question, comment?
You mentioned that it's such an exciting time in the industry and so many changes in storage. We've mentioned cloud hosting providers and the service provider side, but what verticals are you seeing are the quickest to adopt and are really taking the change of storage as a whole, or such an exciting time, and the changes are coming as we speak now?
And I'll talk about this a little bit in my presentation after lunch, but where we're seeing the greatest adoption is in the area of financial services and manufacturing, particularly in Europe, for instance, right? Where you're maybe not seeing the greatest adoption is perhaps in sometimes in government and education, right? It's unfortunate too, because I think they could benefit from it probably more than others, right? But the greatest adoption I'm seeing in Europe is finance, professional services is huge, and manufacturing.
So I think you know, many of these new technologies, new approaches, they're not specific to vertical. I think, you know, they're equally applicable across most verticals. I think you maybe have to kind of drill down, get a bit more specific, so, you know, in terms of what types of technologies we're talking about. If I look at, say, Flash adoption, which we haven't really spent much time on, but now I think Flash is just revolutionizing storage. I think all primary workloads are going to be served out of Flash storage sometime in the next three to 5 years. So Flash is here, it's for real, and we're already seeing pretty heavy adoption in the places that you'd probably expect, you know, in finance and places like that. Another technology that we're really spending a lot of time looking at, and I think is really interesting, is object. So object storage. It's kind of, you know, thinking differently about how we manage unstructured data. When we look at kind of the data growth that's taking place in the industry, most of that growth is actually, it's the high resolution images, it's files, it's kind of the digitized information that we're now increasingly creating. And we've all got these devices that are kind of capable of generating unbelievable amounts of content. And I think that is placing a huge pressure on traditional IT. That you know, how do we manage this in a way that makes sense, in a way that's scalable, in a way that is really cost effective, because this type of data has a very different profile. That you kind of create it once, you might look at it once, you know, 1 or 2 times, and then you might never look at it again. But you don't want to throw it away, and if you do need it, you want it straight away. So how on earth do we kind of design an architecture that's capable of meeting those requirements? So I think, you know, that's where object really is starting to be interesting, and obviously the key markets there would be, you know, very content-centric industries, so media, entertainment. There's a lot going on in the life sciences, oil and gas types of space, engineering, IT, software development, chip development, all that kind of stuff. Really interesting space for object. Object is also kind of an underpinning component of the cloud. You know, every large cloud provider has an object-based service. Amazon S3 is an object-based platform, and I think, you know, the opportunity for service providers, and what many of them are asking us is, you know, how on earth do I compete with Amazon? Look at their price points. Look at how Google is doing, what Google's done recently in dropping those prices. How on earth do I compete with that? And I think, you know, that is where service providers are now looking at different approaches around objects. So I think OpenStack again is an interesting capability with Swift. Open source is going to be huge here. It's not only Swift, there's Ceph. If you guys have come across Ceph, really, really interesting. Very early days still, but the fact that that is kind of unified file, block, and object on a single open source platform, potentially really interesting. And there's a whole kind of ecosystem of vendors emerging on the object storage space. So that was a bit of a long-winded question. Answer.
So on that note, to wrap it up in a sense that as you're thinking, give me the good, the bad, the ugly in one word each. Sentence is too long.
Good. I've only thought of good. Flash.
Great.
I think it is, okay, the one word, Flash.
Bad.
Okay.
Donna, I'm going to come to you in a second.
Okay. All right.
Come on, Simon, you have the energy. I know you.
In the object sense, I'm going to say RAID.
Okay.
As a kind of proxy for kind of that way of managing storage. I think we have to evolve from that.
Give me the ugly.
Cost. Overhead.
Oh, makes sense.
2 words.
Nicely done. Yeah.
That's tough.
Donna.
That's tough.
You can cheat.
I have to agree regarding the good. I'd actually say 2 things, though. Not just the Flash, but also holistic would be another word that I'm using. That customers are looking at their infrastructure more holistically than they have in the past, instead of point solutions.
Right.
We're seeing that change.
That's 20 words.
Hey, you monopolized earlier, so
The bad.
you're on my time. The bad. It's tough to say with one word.
How about legacy?
You know, actually, it's when companies, and this is the ugly too, which is companies who've gone out of business and in a very public way, and lack of customer support. So it's hard to get that into one thing. So I think that's the ugly. It's the lack in customer support when something crashes and burns, which was supposed to be your savior.
Yeah. No, we agree with that. So you combine kind of bad and ugly, and which kind of agree. That's great. Thank you so much for the time. Really, you guys done a great job. I know you had some slides, Simon, too. We kept it optional. What we'll do is actually, from a logistics perspective, Monica, we're going to take a break now, a networking break. We have coffee, goodies right outside with all these Dutch goodies, fat-free. I'm lying. And then what time are we back in the room, Monica? 11:15. It's right now. Let's do 11:20. Give a little bit extra time. Networking break. Thank you, Simon Robinson for 451 and Donna Taylor IDC. Thank you.
No worries.